You're live.
Welcome to the Open Peace Podcast, everybody. I am Jared, and I am joined once again by my friends Abood, Amir, and Kane. Today, we're going to be talking about some very serious issue near and dear to us. We're going to be starting off on the left-right divide here in Israel, and I have a lot of opinions about this. I'm a very left-leaning guy, and I find it just very frustrating how, because like over here in Israel, one of the main things that always annoys me is that there's a lack of like left-wing parties that have any chance of defeating Netanyahu, basically. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Everyone knows that. That's 100% true. Like, everyone knows that. But at some point, we can't use that as an excuse because we need a future. And it's going to have to be without him probably, because his interest right now, being Mr. Security, is he's out of a job unless the conflict is continuing, actually. Because no one's going to vote for him unless they're scared, I think.
That's true.
Yeah. But nobody can stand up to him.
Well, I think that the left and right are so divided at the moment in Israel. They're worlds apart, and I think that at the end of the day, we need leaders and top leaders to come and kind of reunite and bring Israelis back together, because there's been so much division been sowed here over the last 25, 30, 40 years. We had a prime minister who was murdered in Tel Aviv, by a radical Jew. We've had lots of things go on between left and right, and it's about bringing people, I think, more to the center, more to actual things on the ground that can help improve people's lives, investing in infrastructure, investing in schools, investing in healthcare, and paving a way to a peace process instead of arguing about left and right. Because I think as you get older, you can kind of see that there is no real left and right. It's all kind of games that are being played politically. You may agree with some left-leaning things and you may agree with some right-leaning things. And those things can chop and change. And I think it's going to take leaders to be strong and to say, okay, this is what we stand for. These are the common goals that unite us. Let's focus on them, regardless of whether we're left-leaning or right-leaning, whether we're more liberal or more conservative. Because at the end of the day, it has no bearing on your day-to-day life, whether you're a liberal or whether you're conservative. You choose to live your life then however you see fit, and as long as you're following the law and you're going about your business, there's no problem with either way. So I think it's about dealing with that, really.
Your question, Jared, sorry, Amir?
No.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, how do you kind of see it from a Samaritan perspective, like all these protests going on and all this kind of left-right and, Rabin being murdered in Tel Aviv and all these kind of things going on over the last...
I mean, it's really tricky because, first of all, Jared, your question kind of reminds me or makes me ask, like, do we have right or left in the Palestinian territories or something similar to that? And I don't think we have these kind of right and left thinking, whether like you're against Israel or with the peace with Israel. But as a Samaritan community, we've been obviously living between both the Palestinian and the Israelis. So it's kind of like the negatives and the positives we do live through, because we're really living in both and like really between both nations. When I say we live through the negatives of both people, it's almost like a lot of Israelis might treat us as Palestinians, and a lot of Palestinians might treat us as Israelis, simply just because they don't understand really what we are or who we are. Mm-hmm. So it's more tricky than it seems, Amir. Mm-hmm. And I think it's throughout this podcast I'll give more examples of what I mean. But it's Yeah, it's definitely an interesting subject we're going to discuss.
Well, I think I've got to say, I think that it's weird with the Samaritan community. It's almost just by the way that you live and the environment you live in. It's like you being forced to be centrists in a way, because you have to live between, not centrists necessarily between left and right, though, to be honest, because
Yeah,
it's
you're completely
between
right.
Israel
I
and
see your point.
Palestine. But people kind of see the right wing as the Israeli government and the Palestinians as left wing, just because that's who people in the West like to support. If you're on the left, then,
You're more prone to support Palestinians or something.
yeah, you're pro-Palestine, which also means anti-Zionist. But it's not the case, though, You can be pro both, totally.
Yeah. I mean,
That's true.
that's the biggest issue I see with the left-right divide, and especially in the West, when with regards to our little plot of land, is that it's become part of the left-right screaming match that you see in places like America or in the UK or in France, just basically anywhere in the West, where like the right wing has planted their flag on the hill of Zion alongside Israel, whatever that means for them, whatever that means for us as well. And the left has sort of planted their flag along with the Palestinians. And it's just really weird to see people who have no interest in our conflict over here, no real vested interest, turn our tribal conflict into their own tribal conflict. It's a very weird thing to watch.
Yeah, but it's very strange, because you can't even say that like the right wing is Israel and the left wing is Palestine. It's so not like that.
It doesn't work
Not at
like
all.
that at all. It doesn't
work like that, because both the extremes of both left and right tend to hate Israel and and Jews in general.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah, for different reasons, but like it's the same reason. It's just behind different excuses.
And these are the people that control the narrative at the moment. It's the far rightists and the far leftists that are controlling. And this is what I was talking about earlier, bringing people back into the center, And I think something else we need to touch on as well is that leftists here in Israel recently has become a derogatory term,
That's perspective.
Even like you're traitors even. Some people, leftists would be called traitors here in Israel. And I think it's very ironic considering a lot of these people that I know, that I have friends that are maybe that they lean that way politically. These are all people who serve the country very proudly in some of the most dangerous positions. You're talking pilots, you're talking fighters, and at the end of the day, you can't sit there and then say to these people who have done all these things for Israel to turn around and call them traitors and leftists and all these derogatory terms. And I think the whole point in politics is to kind of have two disagreeing sides and then come to a conclusion and come to an agreement. And I think that's how it used to be. Maybe 40, 50, 60 years ago, it was more like that. People were actually willing to listen to the other side of the argument. It seems like now everyone seems to be in their own echo chamber. Everyone seems to be stuck in their own narrative and not even willing to listen to somebody else. So I think that's something we definitely need to work on.
In general,
I
just wanted to add a little bit, Jared, that in general, I think the idea that is spread around is that the left is more prone to do peace with the Palestinians. Is that true in a real sense? Or?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, essentially, yes. I mean, if you talk about party platforms of the left-wingers here in Israel are much more likely to support peace negotiations with Palestinians, a restart of.
But historically, it's always been the right who's made peace.
I was just about to bring that up, because they kind of flipped. Like, I was going to bring this up, is in the United States we had a party flip. The Republican Party used to be the left-wing liberal party, and the Democrats used to be the conservative one. But they flipped in the 60s. Israel had that flip in the 80s with Menachem Begin, and didn't really finish until around Yitzhak Rabin took power again, the second time. He started negotiations with with Arafat, because like the beginning of the country, until the 1980s, the left ruled Israel. Labor Zionism was the dominant ideology. Like it ran this country. They were the ones who were in charge of almost all the major wars. And it wasn't until Menachem Begin came in the 80s, the first right-wing prime minister in Israel's history, and he signed the peace treaty with Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically the way it was. I mean, like the right wing has always been seen as more hawkish, which I think is where that kind of militant right-wing, left-wing tribalism arose here in Israel. Because if you're not a hawk, then you're a dove. And being a dove means you're going easy on the Arabs. You want to go easy on the Arabs? Do you hate your country? That's where I think that comes from. And it's still bullshit, you know? I mean, like as I said, like I'm a left-wing guy, but I could definitely see myself, see myself voting for Likud later in my life. Not while Netanyahu's in charge, because in my opinion, Netanyahu has destroyed the legacy of Likud, which has been a peacemaking party. And he's made it all about him at this point. And, you know, and one of the things that I really see that I feel like is dangerous on the right wing is they're identifying the right wing and the security of, like, with the security of the state and the security of the state with Netanyahu personally, which is
a unique situation too.
Yeah, it's also a very dangerous path to go down. Like the entirety of the state is reliant on this one man. No.
That's the problem. Like too much of what's going on here is about reliance. We've got us relying on America, you know, because America supplies us arms, you know, and then we owe them money.
Yeah,
you know?
wait. Before we go on to that, I want to specify how American military assistance works to Israel. America doesn't give Israel like crates of ammunition or weapons. America supplies Israel with credit, and then used to purchase those weapons from U.S. companies, which increasingly the IDF does not want to do, because like the weapons you get from U.S. companies aren't like very well suited for the types of jobs and operations the IDF does. That's why like.
But more than that, there's more to it than that. We don't want to owe any, like, you know, we don't want to owe anybody.
Of course.
The fact that we're reliant on them means that we're indebted to their agenda, basically. And
but doesn't Israel sell themselves? I mean, weapons?
Israel sell weapons? Yes. We supply the Indian army and police with rifles. We also supply various African countries, I believe Angola, Brazil, I think we also supply, Thailand, Vietnam, I think. There's a bunch of countries that take Israeli weaponry.
But anywhere that is involved in active and violent conflict, to give weapons is to involve yourself in that conflict. And what it basically means is that we can never get out from under America's thumb, and we can never properly talk to and negotiate with the Palestinians without having that, you know, outside influence. And it's a big influence, and they want us to keep fighting, because otherwise, you know, who are they going to sell weapons to?
Well, this is the thing, Kane. I think we mentioned it on another podcast. We talked about how is it possible to directly talk to each other, Israelis and Palestinians? And I think getting these sides
out of the way.
Yeah, taking the Americans out of the game and bringing them in as side observers and helpers, sure, no problem. And, you know, it's the same on the Palestinian side. When you're having Islamic Jihad and Hamas being funded by Iran, who is funding lots of proxy wars in the Middle East, it's a very, very tricky situation that we have on our hands here, you know? And this is what people, I think, that kind of see things very black and white. Either Israel's the good guy and Palestinians are the bad guys, or Palestinians are the good guys and Israelis are the bad guys. They don't understand that we're all stuck in this together. We're all in this kind of chaos, mayhem for the last 100 years together, and only way of solving it is talking directly and letting these outside foreign actors play a role on the sidelines. You know, we need to take over and direct negotiations.
Yeah.
I had a friend who actually. I just want to say I had a friend who told me he's with Iran having nukes basically, and I told him like, how come? He said that he said something like America is treating Iran as like the little boy who, hey, I have nukes, you don't, so it's kind of like that. And he's also said that Iran is not ready to, like, even if they occupy nukes, they're not ready to use them because that would be suicide. That's what he said, basically.
Well, he's not wrong there. That's part of MAD doctrine, and the MAD doctrine is what kept America and Russia from cracking the planet in half. You know, the mutually assured destruction. And I mean,
Of course.
like, I can see where he's coming from, but I mean, I would say that like nobody should have nukes.
Yeah.
You know, like those
Yeah, I would rather go down.
destructive.
I'm
And
with you, David.
yeah, like nobody should have nukes. And not America, Russia, these countries shouldn't have nukes. Iran should definitely not, because it's an unstable region and the leadership of the country tends to go very extreme, and you do not want extremists having access to nuclear devices.
People are so confused. People have no idea what they're talking about. Like, that would be the most ridiculously bad idea mankind has ever made, is to allow them to have nukes. I mean, no, you're right. Nobody should have nukes, but like, that's just not a good idea. Iran have been controlling things around the Middle East for years, and people have been scared. The divide between right and left has probably encouraged this to happen, but there's been a blind spot as to what's been really going on in the Middle East, because people are too scared to call out Iran and say, listen, we're not buying the shit. We know that you are behind everything, pulling the strings. Like, nobody's really held them responsible.
I'm not sure if I completely agree with that. There's tons of people, especially outside the Middle East, who call out Iran. But the main thing that's
not mainstream. Not mainstream.
Not enough mainstream. I will grant you that.
Mm.
Not enough mainstream calling out Iran. But the main thing that's going on in the Middle East is there's currently a Cold War, and I feel like we should talk about this. Because there's a Cold War between the Sunni and the Shia Muslim world here in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And the head of the Shia is Iran. The reason why Iran is funding all those proxy wars and, trying to put Shias in power in like Yemen and Lebanon and Iraq and Syria is for the same reason why the U.S. and the Russians were funding communist and anti-communist guerrilla wars all over the planet. Mm-hmm. And the main opponent of Iran in this game is the Saudis. Saudi Arabia is the other main party that is constantly funding these wars. I mean, you see it going on in Iraq. Like, one of the main funders of ISIS was Saudi Arabia, because they were a Sunni group and they wanted them to fight off the Shia. The Saudis themselves are currently engaged in a war in Yemen, mainly Air Force type stuff, bombing campaigns against the Shia Houthis, who are trying to gain power there. And like the Saudis themselves, they've also supported anti-Assad militias in Syria. This is a Cold War, just on a smaller scale in a smaller confined space. So it's not just Iran that's pulling the strings; it's also Saudi Arabia.
Are you trying to tell me, Jared, that Netanyahu went to Saudi Arabia for something concerning that, maybe? Because you heard...
Oh, you can definitely. You kidding me? Israel has put itself on the side of the Sunnis. Israel's put itself on the side of the Sunnis. The Sunnis have shown they are much more willing to talk to us.
Of course, we had to.
Yeah, like what other option did we have? And there's been
population-wise, the Sunnis are, I think, much more than the Shias. How does it go population?
No, the Shia, there's problems with, extremism, and the Sunnis are tend to be like less of a problem with that area. Of course, not like this is the same thing as like people saying that Palestinians are terrorists because some Palestinians, try and bomb civilians. Of course, like it's just extremism.
No, but I was like in population wise.
In population, do you know who's the bigger demographic?
Yeah, for sure. The Sunnis are way bigger than
That's
way
what I
bigger,
thought. Yeah.
yeah, you're talking around roughly, I think, 80-20 or 75-25, something like that.
Hold on.
But I think it's very hard to assess. At the end of the day, you've got some Sunni groups which are very, very moderate and very, very tolerant and very, very modern. But then you do have Sunni groups which are also very, very extreme and very, very violent.
Yeah.
And the same on the Shia side. Same on the Shia side. And I think it's just so sad to see a beautiful country like Iran with such a long legacy, which predates Islam and goes all the way back to ancient Persia and Syria.
The Persians as a nation are just as old as us.
Yeah, and I just think that it's so sad to see them go through this. And I think that at the end of the day, the real solution to all this, if we don't want wars anymore in the Middle East, is to come up with a religious solution that kind of puts all sides at ease. And okay, we draw these borders, we end these conflicts that are going on at the moment. And look, you accept, okay, we have some differences in belief here between Sunnis, between Shias, between Jews, between Christians, but let's figure this out. It's okay, we all believe in God. Let's figure this out.
Your
and I think that's
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off, but your question reminded me like how left and right is connected to religion. Like, do more religious people tend to be more leftist or right?
Here in Israel, religion seems to lean heavily more towards the right. I mean, like there's secular right wing, but then there's also religious right wing, religious nationalist, which is which could take up another whole 5 hours of discussion here. But just short answer. Religious Israelis tend to go right.
Same in America, a lot more religious people tend to vote right in the States as well.
Especially the evangelicals.
Because it's conservatism.
Conservatism. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with being conservative. This is the big issue: is the looking at each other as enemies.
There's no need to. There really is no need to. And I think that at the end of the day, you have countries out there in the world that are more strict religiously, and you have ones that are less strict religiously and are more liberal. And I think for each person, if you have the ability to choose, if you're in that privileged position to choose what country you go to, you're in a very good position where you can choose where you want to be and what kind of system you want to live under. What we do need to say a word for is our people out there who are under, dictatorships or authoritarian regimes that they don't want to be a part of and that they are stuck in. These are the guys that really need our help and need people to speak up for them because they're trapped in a reality that they don't want in, that they're stuck in.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true,
yeah.
Right. Within all of these groups, there's fracturing. We were discussing just before the podcast that there's a split within the Palestinians, Fatah, Hamas, which is an interesting division there because we have to deal with both. Right, but they're not the same really. They have different approaches, and
one is more extremist than the other.
One is more extremist. Yeah, exactly.
And also, we should just add that Hamas is way more openly anti-Semitic.
Way more.
Way more. I mean, like Fatah, at least, like Fatah, like they're no angels, but they tone it down. Hamas just openly quotes the Elders of Zion, like the
Yeah.
Protocol of the Elders of Zion, as reasoning for why everybody should be attacking the Jews. That's literally in their their platform. The Hamas party is
Yeah.
like they are absolutely no partner, but we also have to figure out how do we deal with them, because even if like we get to a solution with Fatah in the West Bank, we still have to deal with Gaza. And I mean, Gaza is a humanitarian disaster, and it's never going to improve as long as Hamas is in there. But how are we going to dislodge them?
But who's going to tell you, Jared, that Fatah will even be in power in 5 years in the West Bank? That's also something that we don't know. I mean, Aboud, you could probably help us out here, but
I do know
what I
that
see-
Shem is all Fatah controlled.
For sure, but Hebron, on the other hand, which is just south of you guys, there is I know there's Fatah there as well, but I know that it's more Hamas over there than it is Fatah, and sorry, sorry guys. So yeah, who's to say that this won't chop and change? It's something that I think a lot of people are worried about, because as you remember, with the disengagement in Gaza in 2005-06, when the Jewish settlements in Gaza were taken out, there was no peace plan put in place. It was just kind of, we'll go out, this will be a step to peace, and it didn't work. And what actually happened, there was a civil war in Gaza over control. Between the Fatah and between the Hamas. Lots of people were killed, lots of people were injured. And Hamas managed to take over.
I'm not sure, Amir. I'm not sure how Hamas is going to take over. I mean, definitely it's a possibility, but I think people who support Hamas tend to be more on the religious side of the spectrum, and I don't see the Palestinians going towards more religious people, if you know what I mean.
I see. So you kind of see more of a secularization happening in the West Bank, maybe?
What I see is that the Palestinians do not, not all of them are they don't really support Hamas, if you know what I mean.
That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's good to hear.
And that might have to do with how religious they are, really.
Yeah.
And something
I
like that.
was just going to add,
Do you think, I've got a follow-up question to that, Aboud. Do you think that it will be possible in the future, maybe, for there to be a kind of Palestinian movement that isn't Fatah and isn't Hamas and is a new thing that can evolve and can maybe take over from both of them? Is that a possibility?
Oh, interesting question. I mean, it's just really hard because, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know, I'm not gonna call it dictatorship, but I mean, Mahmoud Abbas has been the president for 19 years, 18 years, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that, right? Yeah.
So I don't know, that possibility of happening is still a possibility, but I see it as, I don't know, maybe a low one.
But can they not take a leaf out of our book? Because if you look at Kahol Lavan here, they were a new entity brought from nothing, and they nearly took an election, it was very close.
That's true.
So
it's an interesting thing to point out, Amir, that a lot of Palestinians believe that the elections were rigged, and not even, I mean, the elections were rigged by the Israelis or the Israeli government, and Mahmoud Abbas just being, it's like
he's an agent.
Blame us for
toy
everything.
for Benjamin or something like that. A lot of people believe that in the Palestinians.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we need it to change. We're not going to get where we need to go as long as Hamas stay in power, Hamas have specific fatwas from Qaradawi that they can kill any Israeli because all Israelis are military occupiers. So as long as there are people like that who have the power on the Palestinian side, or at least, the Hamas Palestinian side in Gaza, then we're not going to get anywhere because all they care about is killing us.
It's you reminded me of a period where there was almost a third intifada. And I had a lot of my Facebook feed is pretty interesting for a lot of people because I have a lot of Palestinian and Israelis and a lot of right and left and it's a baggage of all of that. And I remember one friend posting about Mahmoud Abbas talking about the possibility of a third Intifada. And Mahmoud Abbas was completely against one. He said, we don't want any trouble. We don't want any violence again. We don't want, the economy, blah, blah, blah. And so many people were like, what the hell, you traitor? Like for him, for many people, this is, and I can see, I hope you can say this is an obstacle for basically peace between the two people.
For sure. For sure. You know, thing that I've heard about a few times, and I really do agree with it a lot. And I think it's something that we need to maybe think about. Who are we as Israelis and who are Arabs to come and say we want peace when we don't even have peace between ourselves, and Arabs don't have peace between themselves in the Arab world, and Israelis don't have peace between Jews here over in Israel? How can we then say we want to make peace between each other if there's no peace within? I think we need to find harmony within Israel politically, and there needs to be harmony found politically within the Palestinian world and broader in the Arab world to stop these endless wars that are going on over here. It's people are sick and tired of it, Yeah. While we shoot each other, the big five make a lot of money. The people selling all the weapons, and it's just,
some voices are extreme and some are reasonable though. Like we're reasonable voices. Anyone that says we're unreasonable and we have extreme views are ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
We're reasonable voices, and it's about the reasonable voices seeking out the other reasonable voices on the other side, because the unreasonable voices are not going to be swayed, Yeah.
I was going to say, because if somebody calls us extremists, then they are themselves so far in either direction that we look to be extreme. But I also wanted to bring something up, because this is a factor in that almost third Intifada, the knife Intifada, where there's a video. Did either of you guys see it, where Ayman Odeh, the leader of the Joint List in the Knesset, was doing an interview on the street of Nazareth, like the Arab capital of Israel?
Talk about it.
Yeah, where he was giving an interview about it on the streets of Nazareth, and the mayor of Nazareth, who just happened to be passing by, saw Odeh, stopped the car and started cussing him out in Hebrew and Arabic. You motherfucker, you ruined my city. Not a single Jew has come to Nazareth. Not a single one. And just starts cussing him out. And I just, because Odeh was using the Intifada, the wave of violence as a way to bring attention to the plight of Palestinians, which I mean is an admirable thing on its own, but he's also kind of fueling it by saying this is not straight up condemning the violence, by saying it's a reaction, gives it an air of of legitimacy, that this violence is legitimate and should be happening, which it shouldn't. And even though I feel like how Aboud said, when Abbas said we don't want a third Intifada, and a bunch of people called him a traitor, I feel like that's just a small portion of the population who screams the loudest because they want blood. Meanwhile, I feel like most people are like the mayor of Nazareth, who will stop his car in the street and start cussing out another politician over supporting violence. By the way, did you, because now Amir's back, did you see that video, Amir, of Ayman Odeh being cussed out by the mayor of Nazareth back during the knife Intifada?
No, I didn't actually see that, no.
Oh, you'll get a kick out of it. He was just giving an interview in the street, and the mayor of Nazareth just happened to be driving by. He stopped the car and started cussing him out from the window. I just remember Odeh getting all dejected, going Tishma, trying to walk up to the car, all quiet, trying to talk to him. The mayor is just going off on this dude. It was one of the funniest things I think I've ever seen.
It's true though. There's love between Jews and Arabs. There easily can be, and there is between a lot of us. But
well, listen, Kane, you're so right. Go to any hospital in Israel and see Jews and Arabs working side by side, regardless of religion, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, everyone working together to get people healthy and get them out of the hospital. It's all over Israel, and I think this is something that we need to focus on. These unique bonds that people make between communities, between breaking down barriers. I think it's fantastic. I think politicians have a lot to learn from the public, actually.
You're right, Amir. I think like you remind me of this friend who I met about 3 years ago, and just like 3-4 months ago, I discovered he was a full Hamas supporter. I think 5 years ago, and he told me he was a full Hamas supporter. And he told me he stopped completely.
Wow, great.
Yeah, so basically he told me a story. He just grew up in a Islamic school. His parents were also Hamas supporters. And he told me that one thing that actually changed his mind also, it was just hanging out a few days with Israelis, just hanging out a few days. That developed some kind of a mutual understanding, maybe some empathy, I don't know. And he told me that these few days changed a lot his perspective, and eventually he left Hamas. He told me he used to listen to their music, loved to read about their heroes,
So homeboy was deep into it.
He was deep. He was deep. He told me that it was a big part of his life, basically. So.
You know what we should
Americans, how do you guys say it? You got a phrase for that, right? You say balls deep, right, Jared?
Yeah, balls deep or balls to the wall.
Balls to the wall, man.
Yeah, but I mean balls. All right, we wouldn't say balls deep for this because balls deep just automatically implies that
we don't need to explain what that means, Jared. Everyone's got a brain.
Everybody's got a brain. But what about the people who don't, Kane? We have to appeal to everybody.
They can watch Teletubbies, okay?
Oh my God, Teletubbies are so creepy. They're creepy to me now.
Let's not even get started on that. Let's not even get started on that. Nightmares.
But you know what we should do, guys? We should start a great big barbecue in the West Bank and just bring like a bunch of Israelis and get a bunch of Palestinians. We should just hold like a 5 million people block party.
Man,
well, we did something similar to that on Harak Razim. We did something
That's
similar.
the kind of thing we need to be doing to move in the direction we're talking about.
Yeah. We should make some kosher halal ribs, get everybody nice and liquored up.
Well,
Palestinians bring your falafel, Jews bring your falafel.
you guys remind me of a story. Speaking about Palestinian and Israelis getting along.
Tell me a story.
So basically, I was invited to this Encompass. This is a company, like a nonprofit organization that brings people from all around the world and make them have like workshops to talk to each other and talk about different topics. Some for Palestinians, for Israelis, for Pakistanis, Americans, British, and eventually, so throughout the whole 7-week workshop days and conversation, a set, they were not planning on having Palestinian and Israelis talk about their topic. That was not part of the plan. But we had one night where everyone would talk about their culture. So Samaritans, we were also participating. We talked about the Samaritans. Israelis talked about their culture. Palestinians talked about their culture, their songs. Eventually, the Palestinians' turn came, and this girl was talking about the cities. And I think she mentioned, was it Haifa? I think it was Haifa or Akka. I'm not sure which one. So she mentioned it as a Palestinian city, basically. And so that's what she said, right? And one of the Israelis, he got a little bit mad.
I mean, I live here. I don't know about that. But.
So I know what you mean. So one of the Palestinians got furious about that, and Israelis, got furious about that, and he couldn't wait until she finished her workshop or her presentation, and then things sparked up, man. There was a debate. So the facilitators said, like, okay, wait. Apparently, we need some conversation going on. So they put this fish in the bowl kind of conversation where you can only talk if you're in the middle of the circle of chairs. So there's only 2 chairs in the middle. And then it was just fire between the Palestinian side and the Israeli side. I remember even one Palestinian supporter who was actually British, he even brought out a book and started to cite different quotes. supporting the Palestinian side. And so the good part is, like, after this whole debate and after this whole, like, I thought that these guys are done. They're never going to talk with each other. Actually, they were really good friends after they let everything out, you know. They just let everything out. And then, I don't know, they were really cool. They were much cooler with each other after this whole debate.
Yeah.
But you see, it's...
Because it's a conversation, and that's all it is, and that's all it needs to be, and nobody needs to take it to extremes.
Exactly. Just the act of talking to one another. It takes this abstract idea of an enemy people and puts them into like real flesh and blood in front of you. It changes the way you think about it. You know?
Yeah.
Like rather than like thinking about it ideologically, like, oh, I hate this group of people, even though you've never met one, you've never talked with one. Like, you just do that. The second you meet one, like, for the vast majority of people, that breaks down that the propaganda that we've been consuming since a young age, you know? Like,
For sure.
when you take a person and when you put people into an actual person in front of you that you can see rather than an abstract, it helps so much.
Yeah,
It does.
definitely.
That's it. You got damn caricatures that people have created of the different sides, and people think that this is honestly the truth. I was watching a video the other day of it was Rudy Rothman talking to some Nazi guy, some anti-Semite, and the guy, Rudy said to him, because he was kind of suggesting that like Jews run everything, and well, he said it outright.
Yeah.
But he couldn't really say how he thought that worked, like how the Jews run everything. And Rudy was saying to him, well, you know, I'm a Jew and I don't know anything about some, you know, like our control of the world. What do you think, that there's some secret council? And the guy was straight up and honest. He was like, yeah, that's actually it. That's what I think. And people like think that there's honestly some Jewish council that runs the media and everything in the world. And they honestly think that all Muslims want to, you know,
impose Sharia or whatever.
all over the world, and it's ridiculous. And those are the caricatures we need to smash. Because
How do we convince the people then, Kane? How do we break down these barriers and say, look, guys, because it's the same with, you know, I've heard things in the Arab world, Abu, maybe you can clarify. But I've heard that the Star of David is sometimes seen as the Nile and the Prat Vachidekel, the Euphrates River, and that we want all the land.
Oh, you mean?
And the Euphrates, we want like Greater Israel, and that's something that is all over the Arab world. They think that
Like the Palestinians or the Arabs world.
That is.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that for a bit if I can, because that is a conspiracy theory that Arafat himself.
It's bonkers. It's bonkers. It's like.
But what's even stupider is its origins, because the origins of that was started by Yasser Arafat, actually, talking about like the Agarot coin, the 10 Agarot coin, which I don't have one on me. Wait, do I? Yes, I do. Right here. The 10 Agarot coin, it started off of this, where it's kind of old, and I don't know if you could see it through the camera, but there's a picture here of a menorah or a Hanukkah with like a little bit of stuff around it. That's because this is a model of an ancient shekel coin found from long ago that they put onto the Agarot. And
that's weird.
Yeah, and here's the thing that gets weirder. Arafat said that like this coin right here is actually a map of what Jews want to control in the Middle East, and he lined up this outline of an ancient dug up coin to a map of the Middle East and made it up that the Jews want Greater Israel, and that somehow means Niles to the Euphrates. When we don't want that. Like, what the hell?
If we wanted the Nile, why would we give Sinai back to Egypt 40 years ago? You know, it doesn't make any sense. And these are the kind of things that we have to break. We have to break things down. We have to break it down.
These things are so ridiculous, though. Anyone who believes this believes it because Scientology didn't find them first. Okay, like this is. If you believe that, like, you don't deserve an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't get that. Like, if we wanted the Nile, why do we have a whole story about GTFOing from the Nile? Like,
It's ridiculous.
yeah,
In my
It's-
opinion, I wouldn't even address those things because that is like just the most ridiculous.
I agree with you,
bonkers
Kate.
float
thing
right
that
on
you-
by it.
It's not even
so-
worth
like
addressing that
Holocaust
because anyone who
denial.
believes it, like the people who believe that, the people who like, you know, did acid when they first watched the Superman and jumped out the window wearing like a red tea towel around their neck.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? These are weak-minded fools that believe things like this.
100%, but it's the same with Holocaust denial. People deny the Holocaust. I'm like, let them say whatever they want.
I mean, that's ridiculous, though.
No. Don't let them say whatever they want.
No, let
because-
them spew. No, I'll tell you. Freedom of speech allows them. Let them spew whatever nonsense they want out of their mouths, and then you prove it with facts. Look, this is what happened. A, B, C, D, E. Whatever you're saying is complete nonsense, and the world does get that. Most people do realize that. You're only looking
I'm
at
not-
very
I'm not
I think
entirely
they
sure.
say that. I think like they say that like from the Nile to the Furat or something. They might say that because they misunderstand maybe what the Torah said, right? Because the Torah wasn't exactly clear, maybe.
No,
on what is the borders of Israel.
the Torah itself is very clear on what counted as the land of Israel. The mention of the Nile is basically any stories that relate to Egypt, mainly Exodus. The talking about the Euphrates is talking about because Abraham, who was originally Abram, came across
From where
yeah,
Iraq kind of
where
is now.
Iraq is, across the Euphrates over to the land of Israel. The most you can say about where it's unclear in the Torah about what is the land of Israel is like, does it include southern Lebanon? Does it include southern Syria and Damascus? It does not go
Well,
that
it's a
far.
debate that I read a long time ago of this thing that Israel was not exactly, the borders of Israel was not exactly mentioned in the exact form in the Torah. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's where I
but
read
this is not just a religious debate. We are native to the land. It's not just the fact that God promised us the land. We used to live here 2,000 plus years ago.
Yeah,
And when you
plenty of history supporting it too.
you dig into the desert, you dig into anywhere in Israel, you find things, Jewish artifacts. Like
Ancient shekel coin
exactly.
that we dug up here from, I believe it was a Hashmonean coin.
Not
but
to mention the giant flipping wall in Jerusalem that
That's
didn't
the
just appear there.
giant
Oh,
flipping
guys, there's things older than that.
Roman
There's things older
records.
than that. There's-
Yeah, of
there's
course there are things
Persian
older than,
stuff,
like-
there's Persian era
Yeah,
stuff,
They're finding like ancient trading, like market trading places beneath Jerusalem as well. Like we were clearly here thousands of years ago, and anyone that says differently is just ignoring fact because it fits their narrative.
Yeah.
But we were, and that, that means we deserve our place here, but it doesn't mean that Palestinians don't get
You're
to
right,
live here.
Kane. Even the Quran mentions like the land should have been like it has been written to the Israelis, to the Israelites, let's say. But when you come to a Palestinian and give them this debate that like the Israelis or the Jews should go to the land, what they will probably tell you is that today's Jews are not really Jews. That's always the
But
argument.
that's bullshit as well, though.
Quick question about that. Do they then say we're Khazars from southern Russia?
Yes, a lot of them do.
Another dumb fucking conspiracy.
A lot of them do say that. You're right.
Yeah,
No, no,
I want to bring this up real quick, Amir, because like as what you said before, how we need to fight Holocaust denial with facts, but we also, but we can't just let people say it willy-nilly because most people aren't going to go out searching for the facts. They're going to hear something that jives with what they think already, and they're going to incorporate that. That's how we get all this
Confirmation
Holocaust.
bias.
Exactly. That's how we get all
It
this
is.
Holocaust denial in the Arab world right now.
I see what you mean, but I would still say that we need to filter information better, and that's up to companies and people who deliver the information. I would say people can still say whatever they want. It's the same with, They should say, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, all the Jews that are here now are Khazars from Russia and all this. Wait a minute, what about the 1.5 million Mizrahim and Sfaradim here that came from all over the Arab world, from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, from Kurdistan, from Yemen, from Morocco, from Libya, from Algeria, from
They're
Egypt.
talking about Ashkenazi Jews.
Going down the list of the Arab League, we came from everywhere, but we should.
Yeah,
but
They're
then we should
trying to
also
say
bring
that
up-
Sephardic Jews are native to this land and Ashkenazi Jews are converts, so people that just pretend to
Yeah.
be Jewish. It's not
Yeah.
true. There were 12 tribes of Israel, right? The Ashkenazis are descended from one of like,
Yeah.
you know, millions.
we're descendant of Ashkenazi Jews like me and Kane. If
From
you
the
took a
language
DNA, we came from Jews that the Romans took out of Israel after the last Roman Jewish war. In chains, I might add. Took us out from our land, brought us into Europe to a region in southern Germany that we called Ashkenaz at the time, which is where Ashkenazi comes from. And the idea that Ashkenazi Jews aren't genetically related to the rest of world Jewry is absolutely insane, because we've done DNA tests on multiple Ashkenazi populations.
Yeah, it's proven.
It's proven. We have Ashkenazim have Middle Eastern DNA. There is a significant subset of European DNA, but that's just what happens when you live in these places for so long. People are going to intermarry.
You're also missing something.
Exactly.
Yeah, what am I missing?
Well, you know, whenever you take a DNA test, an Ashkenazi Jew takes a DNA test, it says Ashkenazi Jew, but it always says in, you know, brackets underneath in small lettering, like that this is where the DNA is like found, right? Mostly.
Yeah.
But that it descends from Levantine,
From Levantine.
Guys, I've had
Yeah.
an idea. Maybe we should all get a DNA test, and with Leif as well, obviously, and we should see like how linked all of us five are.
Yeah, you might be exiled Samaritans or something.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guarantee you, like if we tested like any Jew to any Samaritan, we would find that they're probably like cousins 13 times removed.
Yeah.
But I also suspect the same thing out of Leif. If we tested Leif's DNA compared to ours, we're probably related. Like,
Bro, related.
I mean, hell, like when you look at a Jew anywhere in the world, and then you look at a Palestinian in particular, like
We're
you
cousins,
can already
man.
see resemblance. Yeah.
You know, it's the thing is about when Palestinians
That's
deny
so
that
funny.
Israelites existed in the land. I don't know. It's funny because I have a Palestinian friend who sells very ancient antiques, up to 2,000 years old, of coins, and just a few months ago, Kane left.
Yeah.
So
Oh no!
Be back.
Oh no! Kane, come back to me, my boy. I can't live without you, Kane. No.
anyway, I was just saying this story. Coming back from that, not a story, but just but basically, I have a friend who sells antiques basically to Israelis because he's kind of allowed to in some ways. Because if you find an antique in Israel or a souvenir or something, you're not allowed to sell it. Or there has to be some kind of steps to do that. But I have a Palestinian friend who kind of does these things in a legal way, apparently. And he finds so many Israelite coins. He found this really, really old tablet that had the 12 tribes on them. I think he told me he sold that for like 150,000 shekels, even more probably.
Whoa.
Very
Whoa.
Lads, we need to get some shovels.
Yeah. Let's go digging.
It's all over. And here in Har Gerizim also, there's like hundreds of thousands of things found, that we don't even get to see, actually. But like really connected to the Israelites and all the nations that used to control them at that time. So what I'm saying is like it's evident that definitely the ancient Israelite kingdom, the Israel kingdom existed just by
Of course it
archaeology.
did.
Well, can I mention something that people tend to forget about as well, right? You can correct me because you're probably a lot better than me when it comes down to scripture, being raised a Samaritan, As far as I know, We were promised the land of Israel, and Moses brought us to the land but didn't go in the land. And obviously Joshua came in and conquered the land, right? And David came in and conquered some other parts as well. And what does that actually mean? It means that there were people living here before we got to the promised land, which means that now that we also have control over the promised land, that if there's people here living here before us, which the Palestinians were here before a major wave of Jewish immigration, even though, guys, there was always a Jewish community in the Holy Land, during the Ottoman and during the Muslim rule, it was a small percentage.
Oh, yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think that what we must learn, a lesson from this, is that this land is full of many different types of people, and the fact that it was promised to the Jews doesn't mean that we must rule over this land and nobody else can live here. Exactly the opposite of that. We can control this land, and we can take care of this land, and I think that's a huge part of it. We need to take care of this land. We need to cherish it. We need to not leave filth everywhere. We need to not
ask this question.
Oh, don't get me started on that. People throw shit all over the floor.
Yeah.
Amir, I get asked this question a lot as a Samaritan when I do some tours here, particularly by Palestinians and these kinds of things. They ask me, do you believe that the Israelites should control the whole land, or this is the promised land for the Jews? And I tell them, well, yeah. I mean, is basically God promised Abraham this land, and I tell them that Abraham also has Ishmael really as his son. And eventually, it's
Yitzchak and Ishmael.
But we should also mention that we're not making our claims to having a state here.
This is what I was saying. It's not based on religion.
Yes, it's not based on religion. I mean, what the Torah says, it records certain things kind of accurately. In other ways, it's more of an ethnography. But the point is that Jews are indigenous to this land. Before we were Jews, there was a Canaanite population that evolved into us. This land birthed us who we are out of another population.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Which eventually became us way long ago. And I just also don't really like to say God promised us this land, that's why we're here, because just because some religious Jews believe that, it's not a good argument for people who aren't Jews.
But from their question, that's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
They want to hear what the Torah made us.
Exactly. And I can accept that. It's fine. There's Christian lands, there's Muslim lands, there's, I'm perfectly happy with that. I don't think there's any problem with that. And the fact is that, at the end of the day, the Torah has been with us longer than the Christian scriptures and longer than the Islamic scriptures. And there's no reason that a Jewish community who has been persecuted throughout 3,000 years more of its existence to not have its own little tiny strip after a terrible Holocaust, after some of the most ridiculous persecution in Europe, in Spain and Portugal, for us to have this tiny little strip of land that is smaller than Wales, guys, just so you understand, for all you Americans out there, Australians, Canadians, Russians listening, we're talking about a place that is smaller than Wales.
Nobody knows how big Wales is or where it is.
New Jersey.
Other than Welsh people. New Jersey is a much better thing. People know where New Jersey is.
Comparison.
It's the same size as Jersey,
Yeah. We had to take that moment to shit on Wales. I'm sorry, Wales, but you know why. Your language is stupid. That's why.
Hey, we love you, Welshies. Don't listen to these.
We love you,
This Americans. We love you over there in Swansea, lads.
I just wish you guys understood how to use the letter Y. That's it.
Snowdonia.
Don't worry, Wales. Your culture outdates this fool's ability to follow.
If the Welsh get mad at me, I can make it up to them. And Kane knows how.
Oh yeah. All right, no, none of that.
I'm
So,
not- All right. Yeah.
But no, what we were saying, yeah, it's true. It's not about religion, though. If you look at it religiously, still, Jews have a right to be here, but we're not even going to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Because we have to, put that aside. Not everybody believes the same stuff.
Exactly. You're right.
What matters is that it is possible for us to live here. And the fact of the matter is, what are we going to do? Like, they're not going to go anywhere. We've got all these Palestinians, and they're not going anywhere. They live here. They've been here a long, long time.
They've
And we
been
can't
here
just...
centuries.
Exactly.
Thousands of years. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just have to put aside the stupidity and the bullshit and just get on with finding a solution that involves both of us being here as equals.
Exactly.
And
As equals, Kane, that's the most important thing you've said all night, mate, because as equals, at the moment, we don't view them as equals and they don't view us as equals. And it's the Jews think they're above and Arab thinks they're above Jews. And until we break that barrier down, we can't move forward. We can't move forward. And I think that's part of what this podcast is here to do, right? Is to show people, guys, let's break down these barriers step by step. The Berlin Wall.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. The Berlin Wall, how many years was it up for, guys? Around 30, 40 years? How much?
30
years? It was up for a good while, but it came down in one night, I believe, or a few nights. Maybe it took them a while to clear the rubble, but it came down very quickly, and that was the end of a terrible 40-year period.
Yeah.
So let's make it happen here, guys. Let's do it.
right, and
everyone knows it's one of the most complicated conflicts in the world, right? So that's
Indeed.
why
it's a hugely complicated conflict. And just to put it in context for Americans specifically, think about it this way: it's like the Cherokee Indians, who were originally from northern Georgia. Trail of Tears, they went all the way to Oklahoma. What's happening here is like the Cherokee getting the right to return to Georgia. Now, they should have the right to go there. It's their homeland, and that birthed them as a people. But it doesn't mean that like the white and black populations who moved in the meantime don't have any claim at all. They have just as much as right to live there as them, but they should still be allowed to live there and have their own sort of community and control over their community. And, guys, we've talked about this for a long time tonight, but I should also let the viewers know that this is the first episode we recorded since publishing the first episode of the Open Peace podcast, and we feel so great about it. We got over 100 views in 3 hours, and we feel
That's
so
amazing.
It really is.
Guys. Thank you guys so much.
Guys. Thank you everybody that watched it. And we're going to try and produce solid content for you every time we do this because
we got
that rush.
Exactly. And we got things coming up in other languages for you. We've got a few Hebrew podcasts coming up soon and hopefully eventually get to some Arabic podcasts as well, guys. Stay tuned.
And guests coming soon. Guests coming very soon.
Yeah, we don't have any. We have some ideas, but we don't have anything set up. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. But yeah,
hey,
but we have some ideas.
I'm a dreamer. This is gonna be big. Don't listen to Jared, audience. You know that you enjoy this. Take it to the skies.
Get audience bandwagon. Get on that Mancunian bandwagon. Let's get this
team.
That's it, mate.
Audience,
join to the moon.
Join me in depression. Join the side of Jared in the ways of
Jared's
depression.
been too beaten down and jaded by this life in his 22 years. Oh, 23. 23.
I'm a badass man. Come
By
on.
the way, guys, I'm getting 26 in about exactly 1 hour. So
Yeah, I know you are. I was waiting to just surprise you with a happy birthday. Yeah, he is. Happy birthday to him.
Special episode.
Why you look at
Dude,
Why you look like this?
birthday.
Is that the Borat accent? Or?
Abud
Is that a Borat?
Mabruk.
No, it's a Jared accent. I don't know what to call it.
Mabruk ya sahbi.
تسلم يا
سلام
صاحبي.
يا
الله
حبيبي.
يخليك. حبيبي الشباب الله يخليكم.
أيوة.
يوم הולדת שמח חביב.
Thank you حبيبي.
אנחנו אוהבים אותך ואני מבקש שיש לך חיים עד 120.
אני מת עליך החיים שלי.
أنا بحبك كتير كتير يا عبود.
וגם לישראל שמסתכלים ישראלים שלנו, אם אתם רוצים בשבילנו לעשות פודקאסט רק בעברית, או אם הפלסטינאים רוצים, אנחנו יכולים לנסות בערבית, אבל אנחנו צריכים לחפש בשביל מישהו שמדבר ערבית, כי הכל רק מדבר ערבית.
Yeah, other than Amir, of course.
Yeah, but we can try. We could definitely try that. I've thought about the idea. But again, thank you so much to everybody who watched the first episode. We have so many more coming. And the amount of support that we have seen so far, thank you to each and every one of you, from each and every one of us, from the bottom of our hearts. Seriously.
So much, honestly.
Absolutely.
We're humbled by the amounts of comments, by the amounts of likes, guys. Just keep it up, keep it coming, keep the subscriptions flowing, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Yeah. So,
Peace out, everybody.
all right, everybody. I love all three of you.
Thank you, man.
And I love you too, audience. Everyone, episode over.
Hey,
All right. Oh, hit the stop button.
third episode.
How the fuck was that?